Very welcome to this week's show. An Easter weekend that promised so much, and yet frustration is probably the key word as we look forward to the visit to Tala this coming Friday night. Some good news, of course, though. Dunny is back after his sojourn to Wembley Stadium. Dunny, how was your trip? It seems like a long time ago now.
It seems like a lifetime ago, yeah. The trip was excellent, but a bit like the last football match. A bit of a disappointment, a bit of a damp squib in the end on the field. But yeah, no, enjoyed Wembley. I hadn't been to a football match there ever. Actually, I'd seen the NFL there, but very, very impressive stadium, very impressive sort of fan experience. So yeah, had a brilliant day and a fun time. But the game was absolutely putrid.
Yeah, the poor old Brum. Anyway, Wembley Stadium is an incredible stadium, but it doesn't have a patch on Sullivan and Lamb Park. So we'll start there, Donny. The sun was out. Actually, what am I talking about? You're mad. It was a hell of a night. It was miserable. It was gloomy. It was proper summer season football. That's why we play summer season football. But Donny, for all the possession stats, for all the good stuff, for all the big crowds, it was a bit of a sucker punch at the end, wasn't it? We did so much good stuff, and then we shot ourselves in the foot again with two very, very poor goals.
Yeah, a very a frustrating evening, but I think ultimately most people left feeling quite positive about the overall performance because we did zip the ball around very purposefully. We did create a lot of opportunities, obviously, and we dominated the game. So there was no question about who the superior team was. So going away from home, being so dominant, it kind of felt like just one of those things where a slip has led to a goal, and some sort of individual moments have allowed them to capitalise, which is something that obviously Drogheda have been exceptional at this season. They've had very few opportunities against us, for example, on the sample size of two matches, and they've come away with 4 points from 6, which is an impressive haul considering statistically we battered them.
Wasn't a great start. Goal wise, we conceded a very sloppy goal, but then we worked our way back into it. Kerr McInroy, as we've mentioned him, is becoming sort of the linchpin there. All the good positive stuff seems to go through him. But his fellow follically challenged partner in crime, Mark Hoyle, who's been used in various positions in recent weeks, got us back into it with a lovely strike. Damien spoke about it as well afterwards, how frustrated he was. Is it just like, Drogheda, they're a smelly old team to play against, and Kevin Doherty really has them well drilled. Do we have to try and be a bit smarter, a bit cuter when we're coming up against these fellas, or do we just have to, slug it out like two old boxers and see who comes out on top?
Well, if we were to use the boxing analogy, I think one of the corners may have thrown in the towel at some point approaching the 90 minutes plus in Drogheda, because we really hit them with everything. The stats obviously show that, 80-20 in possession, 5 shots on their behalf to 27 on ours, 646 completed passes from Shels and 99 from Drogheda. That's insane.
That's an incredible stat.
That's insane. But ultimately, I think you've heard Damien Duff talking about a killer mentality and stuff often when he's referring to strikers and having to be sort of dead-eyed in the box and so on when an opportunity presents itself. But I think perhaps sort of bleeding both games into one another here, I think we've shown both on Friday and Monday a kind of a lack of clinical mindset. I think in other areas, whatever chances will come and chances will go, and we'll take some, and we won't ever take them all. But at the back, when you have a foothold in the game, and when we have something to defend, and when we're sort of unified in our purpose, you need people at the back as well, and all throughout the team to be clinical in what they're doing. And ultimately, I think, again, if you look at the 4 goals that we've conceded between Monday and Friday night, it doesn't make for very pleasant viewing from a defensive side of things.
I spoke to Damien after the match yesterday, without skipping ahead. I think he never sugarcoats things, and he definitely seems to be indicating that these silly goals are down to individual errors. And it's not about slating anybody, but there's only so much you can coach for, and then you're sort of at the hands of the gods in some ways when it comes to, you see the slip. I think it was from Sam Bone and Drogheda, and then his body position probably for the second one, the OG, wasn't ideal. Sam, he redeemed himself in some ways with the equalising goal. But are the injuries now, particularly in the back, starting to catch up with us? You could say we've rode our luck a little bit. We've ground out some really good results. To me, the best one was Pats away. I thought we were top class that night. But sooner or later, will your luck run out when you have Mark Hoyle like yesterday playing that sort of right back position? He seemed to get fleeced without being too harsh on Mark. In my opinion, he was sort of run ragged a little bit and he was exposed. And then you see, you're squeezing players into positions that are not fully custom, or they're not customized to play those positions. So, has our luck run out in that sense?
A little bit, I think, in the sense of, when you're down players like Paddy Barrett, who've been so influential and so thoroughly consistent. You need other players to step up. The same for when we've lost Sean Gannon. These are almost irreplaceable, really, in the team that we have. So what you're hoping is that other players will step up and maybe outperform what you think they might be capable of. And I think at times we've seen that from Mark Hoyle being exceptional. That's like that Pat's performance springs to mind. Obviously, himself and Lewis Temple were excellent with Cameron that night as well. And I think you could say that Caffrey has stepped up and excelled in a position that was unfamiliar to him prior to now. But as you say, the longer that these periods of time go on for, you're going to get errors. You're going to get whether it's literal slips like what happened to Sam Bone. I'm thinking back to Evan Caffrey's slip against Drogheda for that wonderful Warren Davis goal. Where ultimately we got nothing from the game. Like these moments again, like I agree that I think they isolated Mark Coyle, Galway did, putting Dyer out on him often. And I think like ultimately having these guys having to go back to the well week on week and play in these unfamiliar positions, you're going to start coughing up chances, and I think we're seeing that. So I wouldn't point the finger of blame at Mark Coyle per se or anything like that. But I think this is just a consequence of the position that we find ourselves in with the injuries.
Let's move to Galway, because both games were very similar in terms of the ebb and flow. Easter Monday, Duffer only made one change. Harry Wood dropped out and Ali Coote came in. Ali Coote, I thought, had a good game. Really was more the same though, wasn't it? It was really some really top class pieces of play. I thought Shels again completely controlled everything for the majority. But when you come up against John Caulfield, he's a very slippery customer, and I mean that in the greatest way, the greatest respect to John. He's a really wily old fox. As you mentioned there, Dyer on Coyle, people probably only really picked up on that when the goal went in, but did we sort of play into Galway's hands a little bit? We were trying to press things a little bit, and then Duffer said we sort of took our foot off the pedal a fraction just before they equalised in the first half, and he could sense it was coming. And to be fair, I was on LOI TV duty, and I could sense it was coming as well.
Yeah, on that, by the way, congratulations on the call, Richie Baker. I have a woman close to my heart here who was listening to you and said that you did an absolutely bang up job. So fair play.
Oh, thank you.
5-star review.
That's from the tech department, is it?
Yes, correct.
Our tech support.
um,
Thank you.
but you did get a sense it was coming. Yeah, like but again, to sort of to start maybe on a positive, like obviously we started the game as well as you could. It's great to see Ellis Chapman actually beginning to sort of grow and look more comfortable. I think in a red shirt now. I think since since maybe that Pats match where he was given the start, I think he's grown into each game and sort of improved and just looked more comfortable, looked more himself. Um, so that was very good to see him, obviously, and I did think he played quite well yesterday as well. So he's definitely something that we can look on and say, okay, well, this is good news. And we had large parts, like you said, where we looked on top, we dominated the ball again. Um, and they were like sucker punches, really, the goals. The first one, as you said, Coyle gets isolated. Again, this is a this is some of the things that we're going to have to accept, that when you have players, it could happen to any defender, of course. I'm not saying that Moses Dyer couldn't go around an orthodox defender and do what he did, but you think maybe sort of reading the flight of the ball initially, maybe someone who plays centre back might have dropped off a little further, or changed the angle of standing them up, but also wasn't hugely taken with Conor Kern's effort and goal, I'll be honest. Kind of not. Maybe he took it soon. Maybe he took it earlier than we thought the shot was coming. It looked. I don't know, when he chops inside, you got to prepare that the ball's going that way. But that did feel like it was coming. But they kind of reverted back to type, and I thought we got on top second half again, and it sort of played out almost anew. The second half was like, just a redux of the first, where I thought we looked very good for long periods. I'm looking at the stats here as well, Andy, and like it's almost as much of a landslide stat wise as Drogheda. Not quite the same stats percentage wise, 76-24, but 32 shots. We had 27 in Drogheda and 32 according to FOTMob anyway. Only 9 on target. Nearly 700 completed passes versus 164. Like, again, I just wish that we were a bit more, that we were talking about that sort of dead-eyed thing for strikers. But again, I thought we managed the game incredibly poorly after Meepo's goal.
Perhaps the occasion and the passion seemed to possibly got to a couple of people, but you're right. Like, you got 25 minutes still to go in that game. Just before we went 2-1 up with Meepo's goal, Pat Hickey had missed a fairly scoreable chance down the other end when he just clipped the crossbar. So the warning signs were there. Evan Caffrey, I don't know, I'd have to check the stats. I think Evan had 3 or 4 shots on target. Meepo had a few. There was a couple of goal-mouth scrambles. But to be fair, Brendan Clark didn't have to do anything too dramatic to keep Shels at bay. The shots were, can I say, safe. The safe zone for him. Which, again, look, you're creating lots of chances. And that in football is probably the most difficult thing. Damien Duff, I think he was fairly, as usual, he was level-headed, and he doesn't bullshit when he talks after the games. He knows that there's still work to be done. But John Caulfield mentioned this, and I think Damien mentioned it in recent days as well, that do you think Shels are a much better team than what they were last year, Dunny, but just haven't clicked into form yet?
Yeah, I think the evidence, and as men of science, Andy, that's what we will be basing our opinions on. But the evidence is pretty clear to me that on the eye we're a better team to watch. We're a more dynamic team on the ball. We control games for longer periods more often, and those shot stats. I mean, I know some people are saying, maybe certain players are taking too many shots or taking low percentage shots, but like 27 shots on a Friday and then what did we say, 32 on a
Yeah.
Monday is crazy amount of efforts on goal. Whereas like last year, remember the vloggers and the other affiliated media would have said things about Shels being dour and 1-0 to the Shelbourne, and was the sort of typical score of games that we would come out on top of, particularly early in the season. Frankly, you'd love a bit of that back. We may have overcorrected. We've
Yeah.
gone a bit Noel King ball here, where we're trying to win 6-5, but it's certain. I think demonstrably it's more pleasant on the eye. A fact that I hope will help the crowds in Tolka. It was a healthy crowd. I thought on a Monday, over 4,000 in the home end, which is great to see. And the place looked brilliant. The new paint job and everything in the sun. It looks glorious. But you just hope, like, because our home form on the whole, that sort of Bows and Derry performance, results aside, it's been kind of lackluster. A lot of draws and obviously the only defeat. And you'd hope that this, wouldn't put any kind of swing voters off showing up to games in future. But the games have been entertaining. I think we can definitely say that.
I would absolutely agree. I thought there's a lot to be positive about. I was working with, of course, with the LOI TV crew yesterday, non-Shelbourne men, our League of Ireland men, and they certainly enjoyed the game, the spectacle. You touched there. We've played 6 home games so far, Dunny. We've only won 2 of them. And that includes the very first game against Derry. We're dropping soft points. The only possible saving grace is that everyone else seems to be in the same mixer at the moment. When from 11 games, Shels now have, I think is it not 18, 19 points? I have my notes here somewhere. So that's well below 2 per game. But we are creating a lot of chances. I'll just dip into a couple of questions here that we got in. Thanks to everyone for sending them in. Shane Kennedy. Shane sent in about 5 questions in one here. Is the Coiler experiment over, Dunny?
Well, the chance would be a fine thing. I think. We're not here because Duff, went into the lab in the AUL one morning and tried to concoct the greatest centre half there's ever been, and this is what we're trying. It's there. He's there out of necessity. We're playing that shape and him in it out of necessity. It's largely worked, I think, considering, like, as we spoke about, the players that we're missing. But with Cameron Ledwidge going off with what looked like a serious bang to his leg yesterday, I don't see how Coiler gets moved out of there anytime soon. I don't think Paddy Bart's going to be back until next month, and we mightn't see Lewis Temple till the end of next month or beyond. So I think out of necessity we're going to have to continue as we are.
Well, I think if anyone has had their head screwed on, will agree that Mark Hoyle has done a superb job, both as captain and as a makeshift defender. And I would say that when he comes out of this, if and when he returns to that midfield general role, he'd be a better player for his experience. Evan Caffrey, is he the best player in the league? He is, according to Shane Kennedy. What do you think, Dunny?
I admire the positivity. He's in a very good moment. Let's put it that way. I wouldn't be crowning anyone best player in anywhere just yet. But as we've sort of touched on previously, he is that soldier who'll throw himself on top of the grenade for the team. He's played in so many different positions already this season. A more honest and a more sort of diligent worker, I don't think you'll find. So hats off to him, absolutely, and obviously chipping in with goals and assists as well.
I think he's still only 22, which is frightening. When he's a specimen of a young man. He's an absolute, he's a workhorse, and his attitude is incredible. So I don't think you can ever say who's the best player or this or that, because you got 25 opinions when you ask 25 people. But it's a good question to ask anyway, Shane. Um, so yeah, look, there's probably not too much to delve into there further, Dunny. I think everyone who was at the game hopefully enjoyed the experience. Um, they Mauro Bacotto, of course, had the tunes pumping out. I went to bed last night with is a Komodo banging in my head.
In your head. Yeah.
But I think, as you said, Dunny, look, we've given praise and credit to the folks behind the scenes, Neil Doyle and his band of merry men and women. I thought Talca looked wonderful yesterday. The pitch, I will give credit. I had the pleasure of walking the pitch before and after the match, and it's really come a long way. That in itself has probably helped add to our stats. You know, we can pass the ball, and move the ball quicker. Um, but look, there's no need for doom and gloom. A hell of a long way to go this season. Um, so this Friday, Dunny, we're going to see our old buddies out in Tala. Now, if people thought we had a bit of a bad day yesterday, which it wasn't a bad day, let's spare a thought for our friends in Tala, who really had a kick to the nuts. They won't be happy. Are we going to get a bit of a reaction on Friday night from them, Dunny?
Oh, yeah, it was a bit of a Sophie's choice hate watch situation there, really, wasn't it?
Oh, was it?
I thought it was 2-2 until I showed up at Hulk and someone told me that they Bows had nicked it. So that's good fun, although uh, hard to know how to feel when you see Bows celebrating like that. But yeah, strange. They're singing for the manager's head at half time and at full time. No happier men. So regarding Rovers, I think we always have a tough time against them out there. Insofar as will there be a reaction? Um, nothing too knee jerk. I wouldn't have thought. They're kind of going through their own bit of a mini crisis. I know that the previous results had perked up, but they've been losing players through injury. Mandrew was gone. I saw O'Neill went off injured in the game before last as well, and they've kind of a bit like ourselves, not really hit a streak of form that they'd be super proud of or happy with. So unfortunately, like what we've done in the previous two games, while being very dominant and only coming away with 2 points, it kind of puts a bit of pressure on us, I think, here to have to bring the game to Rovers. Whereas ordinarily you might have thought, okay, well, a tight game and a draw out in Tala isn't a bad result. But like we've drawn so many now of our last few games that the idea of going there and dropping any points doesn't feel great. Like doesn't feel like something you take and say, I have 1-1, that'd be fine, or 0-0 would be fine, or kind of feels like we might need to make a bit of a statement, or certainly avoid Shamrock Rovers making a statement at our behalf.
If you recall, was it last September, we went to Tala with a very makeshift squad. I think we had only 13 or 14 fit players, and we didn't quite get through that one. We hope for a better result on Friday. Dunny, before we move on further, Keith Long was the first casualty of the managerial world with Waterford. Were you surprised with that? Do you think it was a bit of a knee-jerk reaction? They had played 10 games, they'd won 3, lost 7, but probably more importantly, they had lost 6 in a row. Do you think they could maybe live to regret that decision?
Well, I mean, when you lose 6 games in a row at any level of football, you're probably in a bit of trouble. I think it's more symptomatic of what's happening behind the scenes there. I don't think the takeover and subsequent incarceration of the chairman at the time, and the fallout from that, with his son being still very much involved in the football club, I don't think Waterford fans feel they're getting a huge amount of sort of favourable shine from that relationship with Fleetwood. I think they feel that they're being kind of taken for a ride a little bit. I think there may have been some players there that weren't necessarily the manager's first choice, and that he was having to effectively kind of do his job with one hand behind his back, because there were things being foisted on him from the UK. So I think Waterford, if they continue, I mean, they have some talented players. I'd be surprised to see them in the bottom two, but you never know. They need they have they have access to players in the UK, obviously, on a level that maybe Cork, for example, don't. So if they need players to come in to keep them up, maybe they can do that. But there doesn't seem like much of an identity there, and I think Keith Long was kind of suffering because of that. So I've got on the record here. I rate Keith Long as a manager, and I just think maybe the club and himself there not the perfect fit right now.
We will see how they progress. Just one last question from Stephen O'Connor. This one might take you back to the fans forum a few months ago, Dunny. Lots of positive to take from the last few weeks, despite not great results. Do you think with all the chopping and changing at the back will help us to absorb the loss of Sean Gannon when it comes to Champions League time? Stephen is obviously getting his passport and his bags packed early. Would it be fair to say that right now Sean Gannon's probably the least of our worries going into a European campaign, even though it is still some time away?
Yeah, obviously, that came up at the forum about him being missing for that game. And look, in the meantime, well, what Duff said he'd do then was what he's subsequently done. When without Sean Gannon, we've gone to three centre backs and wing backs, and with varied results, but largely I think we've looked okay in that shape. So the weather, although hard to predict, a bit like the LOI itself, hard to predict from one day or 1 hour to the next. But Talca was looking fantastic on the bank holiday Monday, and definite kind of summer tour vibes. A lot of the bucket hats I should say, were out. So maybe that's what got people thinking about European travels.
Yeah, why not? It's something to look forward to. So thanks for your question, Stephen. So before we move on to the Demolition Derby, that was the Women's Premier Division game on Saturday. Just again, thanks to everyone for sending in all your comments. And if you're listening to the show right now, we'd appreciate if you would just go in, take a few seconds to rate the show, tell us how brilliant Dunny is, and if there's anything else you want to get in touch with, send us your comments and questions. And yeah, it's always great to hear from you. Now, as Dunny was off drowning his sorrows last week, again, just want to thank John Brennan and Adam Leonard, who stepped in to somehow try and fill the void of Dunny. But the two guys are brilliant, and we got some great feedback from everyone who listened. So, Dunny, sandwich in between the two men's games, we were in a wet and gloomy, but ultimately a joyous Talca Park on late Saturday afternoon. Eoin Wearen's team put another 7 past a second team. This time it was Cork City, 7-0. Could have got off to a tricky start with a fairly debatable decision from the officials for an Amanda McQuillan spill. Now, I was 60 odd yards away up in the commentary box, but to me, it looked well over the line.
Yeah, that was a weird one, wasn't it? If you'd tapped me on the shoulder then and said, "Don't worry, we were going to win 7-0," I would have been like, "Okay, I'll have what you're having." But yeah, we were in Section E. We didn't brave the Ballybock due to the inclement weather, but it looked very much to all of us that the ball had definitely crossed the line. Now, obviously, with what transpired after that, it would have surely just been a blip on an otherwise very super impressive performance.
So yeah, it may have kept up the defences for another 5 or 10 minutes or so, but Shels were on fire. Mackenzie Anthony again, double for her. Noelle Murray back from her suspension. uh, off the bench to score 2 goals. Leah Doyle contributed, as did um, who am I missing? Rebecca Devereux and Kate Mooney, of course, who I thought scored the goal of the day. Things are going very well for Owen at the moment as they head into the All Ireland Cup this weekend. They have Linfield coming to Talca. Is that a cup competition that you think Owen will take seriously? I know he does take all games seriously, but is this something more of a bonus to the season if they can achieve something in it?
About a bonus, I'm sure. Yeah, but for me, maybe it's just because we haven't overly impressed, gotten to the final of this competition before. It's yet to grab me. I'll be honest.
Mm.
It does kind of feel, when you come around to this time of year and it raises its head again. You're like, oh, okay, well, no league fixture because we've got to do this thing again. So it wouldn't energize me massively, unfortunately. But it's the kind of thing, maybe like the League Cup in England, where if you find yourself in the latter stages, suddenly it becomes a lot more important. So our squad, as we've touched on before, isn't bloated, far from it. So I'm sure whatever team was to be put out would be a strong side. But it might be an opportunity to maybe give a few minutes to those who haven't been starting games. I'm thinking possibly, I don't know, is Nia Hannon likely to be coming back shortly, I'd say. And and maybe we can see some players that we haven't seen quite as much of lately.
Yeah, we've mentioned in recent weeks, Dunny, about the slightly disappointing attendance numbers, and this is something that we're not going to let up on. Well, I'm not anyway, because I think we've got a tremendous team there who represent the club to the highest levels. It was under 400. Now, it was a miserable day. I accept that it was Easter weekend. People are busy and they're all doing other bits and bobs. Are you as disappointed as I am, Dunny, or do you just sort of say, look, it was a one of those sort of unique weekends. We just got to take it and keep moving forward?
It was under 400, but barely. 391, I think, was the official attendance, and that was the biggest attendance of the weekend in the women's Premier Division. I I I mean, obviously, we'd always love to see more at the games, and particularly, like, I'm feeling exhausted now after 3 games in 4 days. But like the highlight, uh, really, of the weekend was the women's performance. They were absolutely magnificent, and the quality of some of the goals, just like you wouldn't get it anywhere else. So, um, you'd obviously love to see them in front of a bigger audience every time. It was great actually to see Pearl and Mackenzie and a bunch of the other players actually at the men's game yesterday in Talca, enjoying themselves, and absolutely more power to them. Um, but like, what is our threshold? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
four to 500 people. If you can get 4 to 500 people, at every single game, um, I think that's a baseline that's reasonable. Um, Numbers, now, that's just my own arbitrary view. What am I basing that on? Just my time as a supporter in Talca, I guess. That I think around the 400 mark is reasonably good, and if we can keep that, and what I worry about is if that drops. You know what I mean? About how do we keep it at 400 to 500, rather than accepting, like at some other clubs, you're dipping down towards, 100 or 200 at games. Even like Shamrock Rovers aren't able to attract their season ticket holders. It seems, even they've got a recent Irish international World Cup player who's slamming in free kicks from 30 yards
Mm.
every other day, and they're getting significantly smaller numbers than us. So I think, like, I know at the club, we are looking at ways and means, and how do we tap into our own sort of dormant support for the women, and how maybe into the community we can help to increase it as well. But that's something that is going to take time, and is going to take a a sort of cohesive effort from everybody, it won't happen overnight. But I'd like to think that where we are now is our sort of our base, and that we can build on this now.
In the recent Ireland international camps, we saw Eoin Clancy and then subsequently Alex Kavanagh getting called up. Do you think there's a chance for a bolter from the Shels team to possibly put their hand up for a call? There's one name I have written down here, Leah Doyle. I think
Yeah.
she's been incredible, and I've been singing Leah's praises for years. She had to wait her turn in the queue behind Chloe Mustaki, but every time I see Leah now, she's just getting better and better. Her delivery off her left foot is excellent. She's added goals to her game. Nothing drives me more mad than seeing top footballers who cannot cross the ball and beat the first man or first woman. It's unacceptable. It just drives me bananas. But Leah Doyle, I watched her again on Saturday. Her deliveries are top notch. She plays with a smile on her face, and I actually don't think Leah knows how good she is. And that's my little push for Leah.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. She has been unbelievable this season. Just thinking back to, I know she scored directly from a free kick down in Waterford, but it was her deliveries into the box that opened up the game for Shels that day, and subsequently, I think she's probably up with 3 or 4 goals now herself. Her delivery's been unbelievable. She was really, really potent against Cork on Saturday. She played pushed so high up the pitch that that we really just sort of absolutely bombarded Cork. And she was fantastic in her part in it. I think she's got the physicality that she could step into an Ireland camp 100%. I think she's a good age. I don't think she's ever played better football than she's playing right now. So if not now, then when? Like I absolutely think that there's a very reasonable shout to have her included in Ireland squads going forward. And I hope she gets that recognition. And I hope that she senses herself how much of a sort of a moment she's having at the minute, and really leans into it, because she could be huge for us as we try and push on and win things this year.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed. She might get the chance. All she can do is continue what she's doing. Before we move on, Dunny, question here from Robert regarding the Shell social media. He's asking, does the women's he has the WNL team, do they get the same attention as the men's team when it comes to social media? Now, I would say I'm sure they do, but there was a couple of things we noticed what I noticed over the weekend. Some posts going out maybe a little bit later than you might expect. Have you noticed anything in that sense, Dunny? Or is Robert looking at something that's not there?
I think there's a bit of validity to it. I would say initially, sort of on the basic level, I think we should be proud that the club, behind this, the one club policy. Well, our ethos? What does that mean? Where do you see evidence of things like that? Well, the fact that we only use one social media account, I think, doesn't maybe seem on surface level to be super important. But I think when you look at, say, Shamrock Rovers, who have set up a separate account for their men's team and from their women's team aside, I think that sends the wrong impression. I think that's kind of inherently saying that there's people on the platform who shouldn't have any interest in women's football, and I think what we do is the correct way to do it. I'm sure there are times when, again, like I think what you're referring to on Saturday, and I saw it as well, that it was an hour and a half to kick off, and
Yes,
we posted about the free Easter eggs that were being handed out at the game. That should go out minimum 24 hours before, and then a reminder again in the morning or whatever. But on the whole, I think the platform that we share between the men's and the women's, I think has led to a lot of our fan base, even those who might only go to the bigger games of the women's team during the season, they know who Pearl is. They know who Rachel Graham is. They know who, when someone's on the come up, like a Leah Doyle right now, or a Mackenzie Anthony, our fan base gets to see all of that because it's through the one platform, the one portal that we use. Whereas at Shamrock Rovers, they might retweet stuff from the other account or whatever. And again, I think that we have this latent kind of fan base now who support the women's team because they know them, because they see them all the time on their socials. So, so on the whole, I think we do a very good job, and I think it represents the club and our ethos very, very positively. But it is, when you see things like that on Saturday, you kind of feel like we haven't given ourselves the best opportunity there to succeed. And maybe, as I said, when we're kind of brainstorming as a club on how to improve, that's something that could probably be mentioned.
There was another great behind-the-scenes clip earlier today from Quiva, who does an incredible job on the media team. So well done, Quiva. Keep up the great work. So this Saturday, All-Ireland Cup action, 4 p.m. Linfield are in town. I don't know if you're an expert on the Northern Irish Football League, Dunny, but as far as you know, Linfield have yet to actually start their league campaign. So Shels, you may say, are favourites, as they've been in fine form so far. Hopefully the weather improves and we can get some good numbers down for that. So Dunny, I know we're both shell burned out over the weekend. It's been I actually forget what day it is now. It's been a hectic few days, and I have to spend some time with my family eventually. So
oh no,
indeed, yeah. So just before we wrap up, any other business, Dunny? Anything that's come across your news desk in the last few days?
Well, my head has been barely attached the last few days. But just to say, well, I suppose my overall takeaway, 3 matches, 3 very good performances. Unfortunately, it was only the women who could get the win, but like superb as worn out as we are, and possibly over shellburned. Some really good goals, some really great moments, a fantastic performance from the women's team. Really enjoyable days in Talca. Actually, I thought the 400 people who were there on Saturday had a very good time, and again over 4,000 there yesterday. The place looking great, people in good voice. I thought the away end in Drogheda was on wheels as well. Really, really behind the team, despite the fact that it was a miserable night. So, and we kind of had a few sucker punches to deal with. I thought everybody was in really good form and really good voice, and nil desperandum. We roll on. I think, like as we touched on before, I think the performances have actually been very positive, and individual and collectively, we've just come unstuck by a couple of small issues, some fine margins. Like it really, really is. I had that down in my notes. Like fine margins is the difference between, even thinking back to from that Pats game on, like every game so tight. Even the 1-0 against Bows, like nothing's a given. And as we're seeing, other teams are falling victim to it as well. Really, really fine margins all across the league. So I just hope now on Friday for the men we can have a bit of a statement performance and maybe kind of actualize the potential that we've shown.
Thank you, Dunny. Well, I think Dunny and I are going to put our feet up this evening. Maybe even finally have an Easter egg. You never know. as we digest a very busy weekend in the world of Shelburne. As you said, Dunny, we've got 2 superb teams, 2 teams that we should be proud of. And despite sometimes results not going in our favour, we have a hell of a lot to be positive about. So, Dunny, thanks again for your time this evening. It's great to have you back. We will see everyone hopefully in Tala on Friday, and if not, hopefully see you in Talca Park Saturday afternoon. Until next week, have a good week ahead, and we will speak to you then.